Well, my name is Kim, and I'm here because I want to just share with you. I'm a compulsive gambler, and the date of my last bet is July 3rd, 2011. And, gambling took me to a very dark place in my life. I'm just grateful for God that even though gambling was bigger than me, God is bigger than my gambling. And what happened to me was I was invited out to a casino on July 29th of 2000, and I crossed that invisible line. And I didn't know that gambling was actually, or could be, an addiction. And so for the next 10 years, I gambled. And I still was able to function. I worked my job, but my thoughts were all pretty much about gambling. And then in 2007, I told my husband something's wrong. I need help. I don't know what it is. It's a family disease, and it did affect my spouse and my children, as they were young when I started, and I gambled for 10 years. And so I went to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and I didn't quite understand the 12-step program or how that all worked, but it said meetings make it, so I kept going back. And I was in denial that I actually had what they had, a gambling problem. And so over the course of a few months, I took my husband to a meeting, and he's been very supportive. And I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I think you got a problem with gambling." And I said, "Well, I know you didn't sign up for this, but I need to do something about this. I need to get help." And he said, "Well, I'm not going to leave you, and I will support you, and I will help you any way that I can help you." And so he has just been my rock to help me through all of this. And I go to meetings. When I was gambling, what I learned in the program is that it's an emotional problem that ultimately has financial, consequences. And so the debt was high, and I didn't need no bailouts. I created this with the money problems, and I told my husband, you can't. So I worked 4 jobs for 5 years, and paid all the money back to the credit card companies. That's primarily where I got the money to gamble with. And so I don't have that debt anymore. It's gone. And so that was a part of the abstinence, was just getting my footing and figuring out what is actually wrong here. Why do I gamble? And so I kept going to the meetings and met a lot of wonderful people there. And then I moved over into recovery. And recovery is where I had to acknowledge that I was just spiritually bankrupt. I was spiritually bankrupt. And so moving over into recovery is where I just, my relationship with God has gotten it's just so wonderful. It's just so beautiful. And I just put all my trust and faith in God. And whenever there's, something going on or crisis, used to be, if there was a crisis, I'd run to God in a crisis, but I would keep company with Satan, with the devil, and then I run to God with the crisis, and I just couldn't live that way anymore. And so, I don't have to. Today, if there is a crisis, I have God, and I am on my knees every day, and I give my life to God, and I've surrendered this addiction to Him, and He has taken the desire. The mental obsession to gamble, He's taken that away from me. I haven't placed a bet in a little over 11 years. I don't have a desire to place that bet.
So what kind of gambling did you do primarily?
Well, for me, I got invited to the casino, like I was saying, and so mine was the slot machines is what I did. I did kind of dabble in bingo, but I didn't. That was too slow. And that could be potentially for some a gambling thing. I didn't do the sports betting or any of the online betting. That just didn't entice me. so I did the scratch-offs for maybe just a short little bit, but the casinos and the slot machines is what my gambling of choice was.
So how did you finally realize you had a problem?
Well, towards when I started to realize that I had a problem with the gambling, I just said, this does not seem normal to me. This is not a normal way of thinking and living. Because there were nights, it would be, 11 o'clock at night, and I'd tell my husband, that obsession to gamble would hit so hard. And I would tell my husband, I'm going to Shreveport, let's say. And he was like, well, I'm not going with you. So I would be on the road, 3-hour drive, so that I could go to the casino. And what I learned in the program, it just gets progressively worse. It just gets progressively worse. And so that's what was happening to me. It just started getting worse, and I would be walking to the car, and I'd be by myself because I didn't want to take anybody. It's isolating for me. I didn't want to take anybody with me because they'd want to leave and I'd want to stay. So I was walking to the car, and I just said, I don't think this is a normal way of living. And so some of my friends had picked up on some of my behaviors and said, maybe you should try out Gamblers Anonymous. And I said, well, what is Gamblers Anonymous? I've heard of AA and NA, but I didn't know anything about this. And so I said, I'll try it. And so went to my first meeting, and the one thing I walked away with and heard was meetings make it. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go to meetings. Did I have relapses after that first meeting? I did. And then I made it a year. And again, I was invited to a family event, and I thought, you know what, I'm good. Even though the book says don't go in or near gambling establishments, I thought I was okay. And when I heard the bells and whistles, I relapsed again on July 3rd, 2011. And, but then on July 4th, 2011, I went back to a meeting, I reestablished a clean date, and I said, this time I'm gonna get a sponsor and go to meetings and be of service and do all the things that Gamblers Anonymous had asked me to do. And so I do a lot of service work, answered the hotline for over 4 years, which was wonderful, and I just try to give back.
What did God do? How did God help you through this?
Well, God has just been so instrumental in my life, and I was born and I was baptized and raised Lutheran, and God has always been in my life. And so, when we go through the 12 steps and, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to a normal way of thinking and living, I'm like, well, that's my God. That's Jesus Christ. And so I just really dove into the literature and just prayed the serenity prayer often. And God has just restored me back to a normal way of thinking and living. And I put all of my trust in Him. And He's driving the bus today. I'm not. He's in control. I'm not. He's God. I'm not. And so God is just, I don't have to live with fear and worry because I just give it to God. And He restored me back to a normal way of living and thinking, and I don't have to run from living life on life's terms. I run to God and say, okay, living life on life's terms is tough, but help me, and He does.
So if there's someone out there who's watching right now that maybe feels trapped, whether it's a gambling addiction or something else, maybe bad behaviors, what's the one piece of hope that you would give them?
Well, I think for me, one of the things that I had to acknowledge early on was I've got a little saying that I ask myself. If I have a problem, or no, let me back up. If, fill in the blank, if gambling is causing a problem in my life, then I may have a problem with gambling. If fill in the blank is causing problems in my life, I may have a problem with fill in the blank. And so, I have to first acknowledge that there is a problem, and take a step back, do an inventory and say, okay, I look at my character defects. I have to work on my character defects every day. I'm human. I mess up. But if I acknowledge that, I have that character defect, then I can do something about it. And so what I would say is, if somebody feels that that life is just kind of not really where they think that it should be, or that they want it to be, then take a step back and look at why. Why is that a problem there, and what can I do about it? And there is many 12-step different programs out there for people with either bad habits, hang-ups, or addiction, and there is help out there. But there's one thing that I had to surrender, and I have not taken it back, and that's pride. Because if I let pride say, I'm not going to ask for help, I'm not going to reach out for help, because what will people think? That's embarrassing. What will people say? What about my reputation? And pride is just no longer a part of my life. I will call somebody and ask for help anytime I need help. And so I had to set pride aside and say, you know what? I just don't have time for pride. I'm going to ask for help, because there are people out here who can help me. And so, and then there's 3 other things that I no longer carry with me that was holding me back. Was regret. I have no regret that all of this has happened. I just think, if this is, God blessed me with being a compulsive gambler, but he also is there to teach me how I don't, just to be there and show me that, go help others now with that same problem. And so if this is what I had to go through to help somebody else, it's been worth it. It's been worth it. I don't blame anybody for my issues with gambling. I used to blame people, but I made the decision to place that first bet. I made the decision to continue placing more bets. And so I don't blame anybody. And I have I have no regrets of this life. And so there's blame, and there's regrets. And I just don't have any shame that this has happened to me, and that help is available. And my life today, because I'm in recovery from compulsive gambling, the chains have been set free, and I do have freedom from the obsession to gamble. A lot of hard work, and just being in daily contact with Jesus Christ, because if I was not in daily contact with him, then I'd probably still be out there gambling.
What would you say to those people who realize they have a problem, but can't seem to make that next step?
Well, I would say to just have an open mind. And, if there is something that is, holding you back from living the life that you deserve to live, then just, have an open mind and just, find that, just keep going to the meetings and keep plugging into whatever program, Gamblers Anonymous is for me. And so I keep going to the meetings, and the statistics from what I've heard in the last 15 years is less than 1% come back to their second meeting. It's got the highest suicide rate, the lowest success rate. I can't get my money back, but I can get my self-worth back. And I believe all of that.
How did God bring you freedom?
Well, the way that God has brought me freedom is that he removed the obsession from me to want to go out and gamble. But again, I've got to do the work. I just can't sit back and say, okay, God, I don't want to gamble today. But God is he answers all my prayers. It might not be the answer that I want, but it's the best answer for me. And so God has brought me freedom from the disease. I mean, I will be a compulsive gambler the rest of my life. And I will spend the rest of my life with compulsive gamblers, either in a meeting or in a casino. But every morning I get up, and my first thoughts are, thank you, Lord, for another day that I can go forth and serve you and do what you need me to do to serve others. And so God is just everything to me. And I can't do life without God. I cannot, and I choose not to, because another thing, don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle. There's miracles going on, and if I pay attention, even if I don't pay attention, I see those miracles happening.
Amen.
Freedom from gambling is a beautiful thing.